and talking about the science fair, we have Shelby Packard and Miranda Cloutier and Mr. Groves from the Kennett Middle School. And the science fair, of course, that's coming up. And you guys have done a bunch of stuff. Mr. Groves, we'll start with you, just to give you give kind of a little introduction to how things came about for this year's science fair.
Okay, so for the past 5 years, Kennett Middle School has been participating in the Mount Washington Valley Regional Science Fair and in their own science fair. And about 6 weeks ago, they all started working on a design for a science fair project. They've been working very hard. And now we've got less than 2 weeks left before our science fair on March 29th, which you guys are invited to come to. And so we're excited today to come here and show off a couple of projects they've been doing. And those of you guys who have been reading the Mountaineer, you'll see every week in the year we've been featuring some of our student scientists as well.
Well, that's great. And we were talking about earlier that it's just kind of like the ideas that you guys have come up with are phenomenal. Well, Shelby, we'll start with yours because it's kind of the elephant in the room here. It's right over here. Miranda. See, my notes were wrong. So, Miranda, let's talk about this. Now, is it a wind generator or a wind receiver? Or
it's actually a wind turbine, windmill wind turbine.
Yeah, that's why I'm not in the science fair.
So when wind blows on this, there's actually energy coming out this end. I have a voltage meter, and you can actually see the energy that it produces as it goes. It's pretty cool.
Now, what were you trying to discover or prove with this?
Well, the original idea came from I wanted to do something that was, less boring than what most people do. And
no offense, Shelby.
I'm sorry.
Kidding.
So I thought about some of the topics I was interested in. I'm like, okay, renewable energy. That's a really interesting one. No one really talks about it at our science fair. Let me see what I can do. And out of a lot of revisions, I decided to build a wind turbine. And now I'm seeing whether or not it matters what material we use. So I decided to use wood and plastic and metal, aluminum, balsa wood, and just regular plastic.
And what have you found? What's your conclusion?
The most effective one was actually plastic. I think though they were all the same length and width and height. But the weight was different because of the material.
Yeah.
And plastic was the heaviest, so I thought that was interesting.
I would think that would be just the opposite.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I had predicted it was going to be plastic because it would turn easier.
Yeah. Interesting. So your hypothesis.
Yes.
Proud of you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm using big words. So that's great. And now you made you got all the parts, went down to Aubuchon and picked up some parts I can see, and built it. And how long did it take you to put it together?
Probably about 2 weeks. Of course, it wasn't straight through.
Yeah.
It overall probably took me 8 hours to build.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of work, but it wasn't too bad. I would definitely, if you want a new science project, go ahead and build a wind turbine.
And that's fair. I think. Now, did you do anything with adjusting the angles or anything like that? Did you get into that too?
What I found was to make it spin the most was 45 degrees. I made sure when I did my science fair experiment that each wing was at 45-degree angle.
Oh, that's great. Now, did you try it, say, with 3 blades versus 4 blades or 5 blades?
With 3 blades, you just couldn't get it even because the angle would be off.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do that. But with this 4, it's simple, easy. It works.
Now, did you figure out, I'm really throwing this at her, did you figure out that, could you generate anything in your house with this from if you stuck it outside?
Well, I had to use a fan, so what I could tell is you can't really power anything. It's about half a volt. Well, that's because the wind is already been broken down. But when you actually have real wind, not just what your fan is creating, it's a lot more powerful. It's absolutely amazing.
Oh, that's great. Now, did you try it outside?
No, not
Today will
yet.
be a good day. Could be a windy day.
I took it outside this morning to bring it here, and as I was going outside, I didn't have the voltage meter hooked up, but it was spinning so fast, I thought it was going to fall apart. I had to stop it because I was so afraid. So it'll be interesting to go outside and run some tests out there.
You just strap it to
The
the top of your
reason she
Subaru.
had to the fan, and I made her do it that way, was to control the variable of how fast the wind is going, so she
Right.
can get an even measure. But outside would have been
It would have been a
interesting,
lot
too.
more interesting.
Well, that's cool. That's terrific. Nice job, Miranda.
Thank you.
Now, Shelby, and yours is not boring, by the way.
I'm sorry.
Let's talk about what your experiment is too, which is another amazing thing.
Yeah, mine was how sight and sound affects your ability to walk in a straight line. So I basically set up a starting and an end, and
We have some pictures here.
that was me setting up the line, and I did 10 meters, I measured about 10 meters, and I did a test with blindfolded and deaf, just deaf, and then control, which was my normal, just walking basically.
Yeah. And so people were following the scent?
No.
Oh. I thought there was maybe a skunk at the end or something like that.
No, just sight and sound.
Oh, okay.
Two senses.
And so what'd you discover?
I discovered that without hearing and then just the plane, you walked perfectly every time. Everybody knows how to walk, I think, basically. And then the interesting thing about mine was people that didn't have hearing did better than those who could hear. So hearing actually made it harder to walk in a straight line, and that's interesting because hearing is part of your balance.
Right.
So you think it almost gives you a sense of stability. So that was
So what was your hypothesis?
basically the same for the not
Actually,
hearing.
the conclusion, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Conclusion.
So the not hearing and the control were none, and then hearing and deaf and blind was second, third best, and then this is confusing.
It's hard to talk about without seeing it in front of you.
Yeah,
Nice.
and then people that could hear, people that couldn't hear and couldn't see were the worst,
Yeah.
and then people that couldn't hear, see, and could hear were second to last.
That's amazing.
That's a lot of words.
Well, the whole thing too of coming up, I think, with the concept, and Mr. Groves, I think that's probably the most amazing thing about these science fairs. It's not necessarily the experiments themselves, but the hypotheses that they're coming up with, the ideas that they're coming with. I imagine there's a bunch of other great ones too.
There's a tremendous amount of different ideas. We have Mr. Bichet, one of the other teachers, has students experimenting to see what kind of what ants' foods choices they make, how much sweet of food they like. We have students on our team who are using fractal music to see how that impacts memories, like pieces of music to see if tiny broken up pieces of music impact memory. And it's neat to see a student take their own interest, build it into a scientific question, do some research, come up with a hypothesis, and then create a test for it. And that's really fun to see. We love seeing that.
That's Shelby's hypothesis? Oh, okay.
Well, that's Shelby's wiki page.
Oh.
All the students created what's called a wiki page. It's basically a website for just their science project. And it's a way of organizing their thoughts and getting it all together and helping to complete the whole process.
Now, I would also think, and this is what we were talking about before, is that doing these science experiments at a younger age, you're not tainted like we are with all of us going, oh, it'll never work. You guys have no reason to say it'll never work. You haven't been through kind of what we've been through that way. So I think it's great. What are some of the other ones that you've seen that you like?
I'm gonna have to say the music one with testing fractals and how it all works. I'm definitely not knowledgeable on this subject, but it's very interesting. I was actually part of the experiment itself. It was very interesting to see how it all worked.
That's great. And Shelby, what about you? What's another one that you liked?
One of my friends, he did stratum effect.
The Stroop effect.
Yeah, the Stroop effect. So we read, like, you would read white, but it would be in the color black, and we did it in a spiral. So that was really cool to see how it affected your reading ability and some of that stuff.
Well, that's great. So when is the science fair?
The Kennett Middle School Science Fair is March 29th. Open to the public from 8:30 in the morning to about 10:30. That's not a judged event. That event is just purely showing off our scientists. And we hope a lot of people come and check out the work they're doing. They've been working very hard. We want to show it off a little bit.
And that'll be at the Kennett Middle School.
Kennett Middle School. Then the Regional Science Fair, Mount Washington Valley Regional Science and Technology Fair is happening on May the 9th. Probably most of our students will move on to participate in that fair. That is a judged fair. The nice thing about that is there's a time lag between the two. They can revise and use feedback and make their project bigger and better for the big win. And that actually has cash prizes, which is exciting also.
And that's for students all throughout the Mount Washington Valley will be there from all the
That's
schools.
from 7th through 12th grade, I think.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's at the
terrific.
Tech Village on May 9th.
Well, that's great. Well, ladies, thanks so much for coming down and showing this stuff. I think it's great. And I applaud what you guys, I wouldn't have come up with any of this stuff. So, I mean, I know people who just, stick, hooks in water trying to catch fish as a...
Crazy. Who would do that?
Who would do that? Well, thanks so much. So don't forget the science fair that's coming up on March 29th, and of course the regional one on May 9th. And thanks so much for coming down, Shelby, Miranda, Mr. Groves. And we'll be back here in a minute on White Mountains Today.
Tell you the stories that made me who I am. Can I write them